Marcus had always dreamed of a future where humanity's place in the universe was undeniable. In his mind, humans weren't just another species on a small planet, they were destined to become the most legendary beings in the cosmos. It was a vision that drove his every brushstroke, every color choice, every abstract swirl he painted. His art was a depiction of what he believed humanity could one day achieve: immense, interstellar greatness, a civilization that transcended all others. But in the modern world, Marcus's ideas were nothing more than dreams painted onto canvas, and those dreams were, for the most part, ignored. Marcus stood before the massive window of his cramped studio apartment, the city's cold, gray skyline stretching out in front of him. The wind rattled the windows, but he didn't mind. The winter chill was nothing compared to the cold reception his art had received in the real world. At 28 years old, Marcus had already lived a life filled with rejection, and as much as he hated to admit it, he was beginning to feel the weight of it. He'd spent years creating paintings that he believed would define a generation, a new era for humankind, and yet, the only people who seemed interested in them were those who had no real appreciation for what he was trying to say. Art critics. Gallery owners. They saw him as nothing more than an enigma, an artist with no commercial value, no marketable angle. His paintings were criticized for being too out there, too fantastical, and far too optimistic about the potential of humanity. They laughed at his notion of a legendary species of humans, as if it were some ridiculous utopian fantasy. But to Marcus, it wasn't fantasy. It was the future. A future where humanity would rise above its own limitations, breaking free from the shackles of its earthly origins and achieving greatness across the stars. The problem was, no one else saw it the way he did. With a sigh, Marcus turned away from the window and walked over to his easel, the fresh canvas waiting for the next masterpiece. This one, like all the others, was an abstract depiction of humanity's future, a future where humans, after overcoming their flaws, were revered by alien civilizations and respected as a legendary species. His brush flew across the canvas with purpose, layering bold strokes of cobalt blue, vibrant gold, and fiery red. His mind wandered as he painted, imagining the stars in the distance, the planets he dreamed of colonizing, the strange alien species who would one day look up to humanity as a symbol of excellence. In the distance, a knock on the door pulled him out of his thoughts. It was soft, tentative, but Marcus knew who it was. His best friend, Janelle, had stopped by to check in on him. She was the only one who truly understood his vision, the only one who still encouraged him, despite the failures. Unlike the art world, Janelle believed in him. "Hey, Marcus!" Janelle called out from the hallway, her voice warm, despite the cold outside. "How's the painting going?" Marcus opened the door, and Janelle stepped inside, wrapping herself in a thick scarf as she entered. Her eyes immediately landed on the canvas, and her lips curled into a smile. "You're still working on that piece?" she asked, crossing the small room to stand beside him. "It looks incredible." Marcus chuckled, though it was a hollow sound. "Thanks. But you know as well as I do that no one's going to buy it." Janelle raised an eyebrow. "That's not true. You just need to find the right gallery owner, someone who can see the value in what you're doing." He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "I've been to every gallery in this city. They don't care about my vision. They want trends, they want what's popular. They want something they can sell. They're not interested in humanity's potential to become a legendary species, they only care about what's going to make them money." "Don't say that," Janelle said firmly. "You just haven't found the right person yet. Your work is too important to be left to the likes of them. Someone will see it for what it is." Marcus paused, staring at the canvas. He wanted to believe her, but deep down, he knew the truth. No one cared about his message. They didn't understand it, and even if they did, they weren't ready for it. Art, as he'd come to learn, wasn't about truth, it was about selling a story, fitting into a narrative. His narrative was too far ahead of its time, too outlandish for anyone to accept. A world where humanity stood among the stars, revered as a legendary species by alien civilizations? It was just too big, too ungraspable. Janelle's eyes softened as she reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. I know you're frustrated. I get it. But remember, sometimes the world needs a little time to catch up with brilliance. Marcus nodded, grateful for her support, but still feeling the weight of the years that had passed, with little recognition. He turned back to the canvas and continued to paint, his brush moving with an almost desperate energy. Time was running out, and he had nothing to show for it but a stack of paintings no one wanted. Later that week. A cold rain tapped against the windows as Marcus stood in the heart of the city's art district, staring at the gallery he had just entered. The art house, one of the most prestigious galleries in the city. This was it, he thought. This was his chance. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached the front desk, where a woman with short blonde hair sat flipping through a portfolio. She glanced up as he approached, offering him a polite but distant smile. Can I help you? She asked, her voice professional but uninviting. I have some work I'd like you to consider, Marcus said, pulling a small portfolio from his bag. I'm an artist, and I believe my work would be a good fit for your gallery. The woman's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered. Sure, let's take a look. Marcus opened the portfolio, revealing a selection of his most recent works. The first painting was a bold depiction of humanity's first interstellar colony, with towering cities on distant planets and a glowing spaceship soaring across the stars. The second was a more abstract piece, with swirling patterns representing the evolution of human consciousness, growing, expanding, evolving beyond the Earth. The gallery owner's eyes skimmed the first few pieces without much interest. But when she got to the final painting, the one depicting humans as a legendary species, revered by other civilizations, she stopped. Her eyes lingered on the painting for a moment longer than the others. This is interesting, she said, though her tone was still skeptical. But you'll have to understand, we deal in contemporary art here. This isn't exactly what people are looking for these days. It's a little too out there. Marcus felt his heart sink. He had heard it all before. But the message behind it, he began, trying to explain. I'm sorry, she interrupted, closing the portfolio with a swift motion. It's just not the kind of art we showcase here. Perhaps you should try elsewhere. Good luck. With that, she turned back to her desk, dismissing him as quickly as she had acknowledged him. Marcus stood there for a moment, frozen. He had known it was coming, but it still stung. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of another artist's work being set up for display, a piece that, to him, seemed shallow and uninspired. It was just another trendy piece, something designed to appeal to the masses, devoid of any true vision. And yet, that was the art that the gallery wanted. That was the art that sold. Feeling the weight of his rejection, Marcus walked out into the rain, his dreams of recognition slipping further away with each step. But despite the crushing blow, deep inside, he still held on to one thing, his belief in humanity's potential. He wasn't giving up, not yet. One day, the world would understand. One day, his art would become the beacon that guided humanity to its rightful place as a legendary species in the universe. But that day, it seemed, was still far off. The days following the rejection were some of the hardest Marcus had ever faced. His passion for his art remained, but the world he was trying to reach out to felt colder and more distant with every gallery owner's dismissive glance, every critic's harsh words. He knew what he was creating was more than just paint on canvas, it was a glimpse into the future of humanity, a future where they would be a legendary species admired by alien civilizations. But it seemed no one cared about that vision. No one understood it. And yet, the fire within him refused to die. Despite the setbacks, Marcus couldn't help but feel that his moment was coming, that someday, somehow, people would recognize the importance of what he was doing. One evening, after another long day spent in his studio, Marcus received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but there was something in the tone that immediately captured his attention. Hello, is this Marcus Ward, the artist? The voice asked. This is he, Marcus replied cautiously. "Who's calling?" "I'm Julian Turner, owner of Turner's Gallery. I've seen some of your work, and I have to say, I'm intrigued. I think you may be exactly what I'm looking for. I'd like to meet you in person." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Turner's Gallery was known for showcasing the most innovative and forward-thinking artists, people who didn't just follow trends but created them. It was the kind of place where Marcus's vision of humanity as a legendary species could potentially be understood. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. "I'm interested," Marcus said, trying to keep the excitement from creeping into his voice. "When would be a good time for me to come by?" "How about tomorrow afternoon? I'll have a private space ready for you to present your work," Julian replied. "Tomorrow works perfectly," Marcus agreed, trying to suppress his nervousness. "I'll be there." The next day, Marcus arrived at Turner's Gallery with a portfolio full of his latest works, his heart pounding in anticipation. As he walked through the gallery's grand entrance, he felt a sense of awe. The walls were adorned with incredible pieces, art that pushed boundaries, defied conventions, and made a statement. This was the kind of place where his art could belong. Julian Turner, a tall man with sharp features and an air of confidence, greeted Marcus with a firm handshake. He was dressed in an impeccable suit, his silver hair adding an aura of sophistication. He didn't waste time with pleasantries but instead led Marcus to a private room in the back of the gallery, where a display table was already set up with a clean white cloth and lighting designed to make any piece of art look its best. "Let's see what you've got," Julian said, gesturing for Marcus to set up his portfolio. Marcus felt a wave of nervousness, but pushed it aside. He laid out his best pieces, his most ambitious works that spoke to the future of humanity as a legendary species. The first piece, a breathtaking rendering of a human colony on a distant exoplanet, portrayed towering cities under a nebula-filled sky. The second painting, abstract but powerful, depicted humanity's evolution, from its early, primitive stages to an advanced, enlightened species capable of bridging the stars. Julian was silent as he moved from one piece to the next, his eyes flicking over each one with a critical gaze. The tension in the room was palpable as Marcus waited for the verdict, but instead of the dismissal he'd grown so accustomed to, Julian's expression began to change. His eyes lingered on the final painting, the one depicting humanity revered as a legendary species, standing tall among alien civilizations, celebrated for their incredible achievements. "This one," Julian said softly, pointing to the last painting. "This is where it gets interesting. This is the kind of work I've been searching for. There's a raw power to it, an idea that transcends art itself. It's not just a painting, it's a vision. A vision of humanity's place in the universe. This is what I want for my gallery." Marcus's heart soared. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His art, his vision, was finally being seen for what it was, something monumental, something that could change the way people thought about the future of humanity. I didn't think anyone would understand it," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Julian smiled, a knowing gleam in his eyes. "Most people don't. That's why I've been looking for someone like you. The world isn't ready for this yet, but it will be. I believe your work has the power to change the conversation about what humans are capable of." Marcus's mind raced. This was it. This was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. "We can set you up with a showing here," Julian continued, his voice firm with resolve. "But before we do anything, there's something important I need you to understand. This is not a typical gallery show. Your work, your vision, it will challenge people. It will push them to see humanity in a way they've never seen it before. That's exactly what I want. But it will be difficult, Marcus. Some people will not like it. Others will try to tear it down. Are you prepared for that?" Marcus thought about it for a moment. The path ahead wasn't easy, but it was the path he had always envisioned. It was the only path that could lead to humanity being recognized as the legendary species it was destined to become. "I'm ready," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I've spent my whole life working toward this moment. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Julian nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. Good. Then let's make history. Later that week. The opening night of Marcus's first official gallery show at Turner's Gallery was nothing short of overwhelming. The room was filled with art lovers, critics, and collectors, each eager to see the latest exhibition from one of the city's most promising new talents. The pieces hung on the walls like windows into another world, a world where humans were more than just survivors of a planet but had transcended their origins to become a dominant, legendary species in the universe. As Marcus watched the crowd, he could feel the energy in the room shift. Some people stared at his paintings with confusion, others with awe, but no one was indifferent. His work was having an impact, even if it wasn't immediately understood. And that was enough. Towards the end of the evening, Marcus found himself standing in front of the final piece, the painting of humanity as a legendary species. A group of people had gathered around it, discussing its implications in hushed tones. Marcus couldn't help but smile to himself. This was just the beginning. Soon, they would all understand what he had known from the start, that humans were destined for greatness, that they were a legendary species, and that his art would be the catalyst for that understanding. Julian approached him, his face gleaming with approval. You've done it, Marcus. You've made them see it. Marcus's heart swelled with pride. He had finally found the place where his vision would thrive, the space where humanity's potential could be realized. The gallery owner had been right. This was just the beginning. In the weeks following his gallery opening, Marcus had become something of a local sensation. His paintings were being displayed in galleries, featured in interviews, and slowly, the art world was beginning to take notice. His unique blend of abstract futurism and humanity's potential had struck a chord, even if some still didn't fully understand the depths of what he was trying to convey. But there was one thing about Marcus that no one knew, not the critics, not the collectors, and certainly not the art world at large. Marcus wasn't just a struggling artist with a grand vision. He was a descendant of an ancient bloodline, one with ties to powerful, influential figures who understood the true significance of humanity's future. The secret Marcus carried had been passed down through generations, an unspoken knowledge that humanity was not only capable of greatness, but destined to become the most revered and legendary species the universe would ever know. His ancestors had once been part of an elite group that had worked quietly behind the scenes, laying the groundwork for humanity's rise. They had been the keepers of this knowledge, the protectors of a future where humans would transcend their earthly limitations and spread across the stars. But over time, the group had disbanded, and the knowledge had faded into myth. Most of Marcus's family had gone on to live ordinary lives, unaware of the incredible legacy they were part of. But Marcus had known. From the time he was a child, he had been taught the hidden truths about humanity's potential. His family had kept the secret alive, ensuring that he understood the gravity of what he was a part of. He was not just an artist, he was a custodian of a vision that could reshape the very course of history. And as the years passed, he had come to realize that his art was the perfect vessel for sharing that vision with the world. In the quiet solitude of his studio, surrounded by the works that had brought him so much attention, Marcus sat back in his chair, deep in thought. His fingers idly traced the edges of a painting that depicted a colossal human-built city on a distant planet. It was a masterpiece, a testament to the heights humanity would one day reach. But it was more than that. The city, the architecture, the people, the ships, everything about it was real, or at least, would be. It wasn't just art, it was prophecy. Suddenly, his phone buzzed on the table, breaking his concentration. It was a message from an unknown number, but the words were simple and direct: "We need to talk. Come to the usual place tomorrow." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly who the message was from. It was from his grandfather, Elijah Ward, the man who had introduced him to the hidden truths of their bloodline. Elijah had long since retired from public life, but Marcus still communicated with him, mostly in secret. The old man had been a key figure in the circle of individuals who had once nurtured the vision of humanity's legendary status. It was through Elijah that Marcus had inherited his family's knowledge, and it was Elijah who had made him understand the true power of his art. With a deep sigh, Marcus replied, "I'll be there." The next day, Marcus drove across the city to a small, unassuming diner, a place his grandfather had frequented for years. The moment he walked inside, he spotted Elijah in the corner booth, his face partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. The old man's once strong features were now softened with age, but his eyes still burned with the same intensity Marcus had come to expect. Elijah had always been a man of few words, but when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of history. "Sit down, Marcus," Elijah said as he motioned to the booth across from him. "We have much to discuss." Marcus slid into the seat, his curiosity growing with each passing second. The air between them felt heavy, as if the conversation that was about to unfold would change everything. "What's going on, grandfather?" Marcus asked, his voice laced with concern. "What is it you want to tell me?" Elijah leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. "It's time you knew the full extent of what we've kept from you. What your art, what your vision, truly represents. You've been asking the right questions, but now you need to understand the answers." Marcus's pulse quickened. "I've always known that humanity had the potential to become more. To rise above everything we've been told we are. I've seen it in my art. But why haven't you told me the rest? Why didn't you say something sooner?" Elijah's eyes darkened, a hint of sadness in his expression. "Because, my boy, the world wasn't ready. Even now, most people wouldn't understand what we've seen. It's one thing to see the potential for greatness, but it's another to prepare the world for that future. The legacy of our family is one of protection, not revelation. And until recently, we didn't think the time had come for you to fully take on that burden." Marcus felt a knot form in his stomach. He had always suspected there was more to his family's legacy than he had been told, but hearing it from Elijah's lips made it all feel more real, and more dangerous. "What do you mean? What burden?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The burden of understanding just how important your art truly is," Elijah replied. "You've been creating more than just beautiful pieces. You've been creating a blueprint, a roadmap for the future of humanity. You've been channeling the hidden truths that have been passed down through generations. Your paintings, they are not just representations of your imagination. They are windows into humanity's future. They are the key to unlocking the truth about who we really are." Marcus's mind raced as he absorbed his grandfather's words. He had known that his art was important, but he hadn't fully realized how deep it ran. He had been creating pieces that were not only prophetic but also transformative, images that could change the course of human history. Elijah leaned back in his seat, his gaze unwavering. "There are others who know what you're doing, Marcus. People who understand the potential of your work, but they aren't your friends. They want to control the vision you're sharing. They'll stop at nothing to make sure that your art doesn't reach the people who need to see it. You must be careful." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The art world, which had once seemed like a battlefield of egos and trends, was now a place of far greater stakes. There were forces at play here that he hadn't even begun to comprehend. "Who are these people?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. Elijah's eyes darkened. "We'll get to that soon enough. For now, you need to focus on your next steps. Continue your work, but don't let your guard down. What you're doing, what you've been doing for years, could change everything. You've already sparked interest, but soon, you'll have the power to make the entire world see humanity's true potential. But only if you can stay ahead of those who want to control it." Marcus's mind spun with the weight of his grandfather's words. He had spent so long fighting for his art to be recognized, for his vision of humanity's future to be seen. But now, it was clear that the path ahead would be more treacherous than he could have imagined. The stakes had just gotten much higher. As he left the diner, Marcus's thoughts were consumed by the conversation he had just had. He wasn't just an artist anymore. He was a key player in a much larger game, one that could determine the future of humanity itself. The world wasn't ready for the truth he was about to reveal. But Marcus knew one thing for certain: he was ready to fight for it. He was ready to make the world see humanity's destiny as a legendary species. The weight of Elijah's words lingered over Marcus in the days that followed their meeting. His art had always been an expression of his deepest beliefs, an effort to show humanity's potential for greatness. But now, he understood that it was more than just personal expression. It was a roadmap for the future, and that future was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. As he continued his work in the studio, Marcus began to notice things he hadn't before. Subtle shifts in the air around him, a lingering sense of being watched. It wasn't paranoia, at least, he didn't think it was. He had always felt a connection to his art that was almost spiritual, but now it seemed that connection was being sensed by others as well. The realization struck him hard: the forces Elijah had spoken of weren't just abstract. They were real, and they were already observing him. One afternoon, as Marcus was putting the finishing touches on his latest painting, a breathtaking representation of humanity's ascension to intergalactic civilization, a sharp knock at the door startled him. His heart leapt into his throat. It was too early for a scheduled visitor, and it didn't sound like anyone he knew. He wiped his hands on a rag, trying to steady his breathing before opening the door. Standing in the doorway was a tall man dressed in a sleek black suit, his face obscured by dark sunglasses. He didn't speak at first, simply giving Marcus a silent, calculating look. His presence was imposing, and there was something about him that felt off. The air around him seemed unnaturally still, as if the world had momentarily paused in his presence. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, his voice steady, despite the unease building inside him. The man didn't immediately respond. Instead, he stepped forward, slipping a business card into Marcus's hand. The card was simple, just a black background with silver lettering that read, "Phoenix Group, Strategic Interests." There was no name, no title, just that enigmatic phrase. "I think you'll find that we have some mutual interests," the man said in a voice that was smooth and cold, like the surface of a glacier. Before Marcus could respond, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the city streets without a word. His departure left behind a heavy silence that seemed to hang in the air like a warning. Marcus stared at the card in his hand, the weight of its implications settling in. Phoenix Group. The name meant nothing to him, but the message was clear: they were aware of him, aware of his art, and more importantly, they were interested. The encounter was unnerving, but Marcus knew one thing for sure: it wasn't a coincidence. The Phoenix Group had been watching him. That night, as he lay in bed, his mind raced. Who were they? What did they want? He thought about the message Elijah had given him. People who wanted to control his art, to manipulate the vision he was sharing. Was this the group? It seemed likely. Phoenix Group, he imagined, wasn't just some art collectors. They were connected to a much larger and more powerful network, people who had the means to shape the future. The next morning, Marcus couldn't shake the sense of dread that had settled in his bones. He needed answers. He needed to know who these people were, what they wanted with his work, and how far their influence reached. He knew where to go. Elijah had mentioned that the circle his family had once been a part of still had contacts, still had a network. If anyone could help him understand what Phoenix Group was, and how they connected to the larger picture, it was Elijah. He couldn't waste any more time being in the dark. After a tense drive across the city, Marcus arrived at the small, secluded house where his grandfather lived. The house sat at the edge of town, hidden among the trees, far from the bustle of the city. Elijah's house was a fortress of silence, surrounded by dense woods that kept prying eyes away. As Marcus walked up the gravel path to the door, he felt a strange sense of foreboding. His grandfather had always been a mystery, someone who moved in the shadows, but now, even more than ever, it felt like there were forces at play that Marcus didn't fully understand. Elijah answered the door almost immediately, his face grim. There was no greeting, no pleasantries. He motioned for Marcus to come inside without saying a word. "Something's happened," Marcus said, his voice urgent. Someone came to my studio today. A man in a suit. He gave me a card. It said Phoenix Group. Do you know who they are? Elijah's face tightened at the mention of the name, his eyes flashing with a mixture of concern and recognition. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, he muttered, more to himself than to Marcus. Phoenix Group, they've been watching you for a while. They're not just an art collector group. They're a shadow organization, a covert network that deals with far more than just paintings and sculptures. They're involved in politics, corporate influence, and, more dangerously, they have their hands in the global narrative about humanity's future. Marcus felt his heart sink. He had suspected that the forces watching him were more than just art critics, but hearing the truth come from Elijah's lips felt like a punch to the gut. So they're the ones who want to control the vision I'm sharing, Marcus said, his voice low with anger. Not just control it, Elijah replied, his voice hardening. They want to shape it. They want to be the ones to decide how the story of humanity is told. They want to decide what kind of legacy humanity leaves behind, not based on what's true, but on what serves their agenda. And if that means manipulating the public's perception of you, your work, they will stop at nothing. Marcus's fists clenched. The implications were staggering. His art had always been a personal pursuit, a way to express his vision of humanity's greatness. But now, it seemed like it was being pulled into a much larger struggle, one that was about more than just fame or success. Phoenix Group was involved in shaping the narrative of human history itself. What do they want from me? Marcus asked, his voice shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. They want to control you, Elijah said, his eyes narrowing. Your vision is too powerful for them to ignore. They'll try to co-opt it, twist it, use it for their own ends. They know the truth, that humanity's destiny is to be legendary, but they want to dictate how that truth is presented. And they'll use whatever means necessary to make sure they're the ones in control. Marcus sat down heavily, trying to process what he was hearing. His art, his life's work, was no longer just about expressing a vision. It was now a tool in a larger, more dangerous game. The stakes were higher than ever before. We need to be careful, Elijah continued, his tone grave. They'll come for you, Marcus. They'll come for your art. And when they do, you need to be ready. The days following his meeting with Elijah were a blur of action and anxiety. Marcus felt as though he was standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into the unknown. His entire existence as an artist had always been about pushing boundaries, about capturing the essence of humanity's potential, but now that vision had taken on a much darker, more urgent tone. Phoenix Group's interest in his work was not just an art world endorsement, it was a battle for control of the future. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. If they wanted his art, they would come for it. And when they did, he would be ready. The first step was to secure his work. He had never been one to hoard or hide his pieces, but now he saw them differently. They were more than just paintings. They were the key to humanity's future, a future he was not willing to let anyone control. He moved his most valuable pieces out of his studio and into a hidden storage facility, a secure location that only he and a trusted few knew about. It was while he was working late into one of those restless nights that Marcus received another message. This time, it wasn't a cryptic text or an anonymous visitor, it was a letter. The envelope was plain, but the wax seal on the back had an intricate design that Marcus immediately recognized. It was the same symbol from his grandfather's old records, the symbol of the ancient group that had once worked to secure humanity's destiny. It was a sign that Elijah's warnings were true. Marcus wasn't just a target for Phoenix Group, he was a key player in something much larger. The letter inside was brief, but its contents sent a chill down his spine. Marcus, we know what you are doing. You have taken the first step toward understanding the truth, and now you must decide if you are willing to embrace it. Phoenix Group is coming for you. They will stop at nothing to control your work. You must be ready to fight for what you believe in. Do not trust them. The future of humanity is in your hands. An ally. Marcus read the letter twice, then a third time, the words sinking in with an icy clarity. The message was clear, the fight had already begun, and it was time for him to take a stand. But who had sent this letter? Who was this ally? The handwriting was unfamiliar, but there was no mistaking the gravity of the words. Marcus felt a pang of doubt. Was it a trap? Was Phoenix Group playing a longer game, trying to make him believe he had support when in reality he was completely alone? Despite his uncertainty, one thing was certain: his work, his vision, was at the heart of something much greater than himself. Phoenix Group wasn't just after his art, they were after control of humanity's future. Marcus had the power to influence the course of history, and it was time to choose which side of that history he would stand on. The days that followed became a blur of planning and decision-making. Marcus kept his movements carefully controlled, aware that every step he took might be watched. Elijah had taught him to be cautious, to operate from the shadows, but now the stakes were far higher. It wasn't just about protecting his art, it was about protecting the future of humanity itself. One evening, as Marcus sat in his studio, staring at the unfinished canvas before him, the phone rang. He hesitated, then picked it up. His heart raced as he heard a voice on the other end. "Marcus, we need to talk," the voice said, cool and steady. "We know what you're trying to do. You can't fight us. The truth belongs to those who are strong enough to control it. You don't have the power to stop us." The voice belonged to one of Phoenix Group's operatives. Marcus could tell by the way he spoke, the calm, authoritative tone that carried a subtle threat. The man wasn't asking for Marcus's cooperation, he was demanding it. "I don't want anything to do with you," Marcus said, his voice tight with resolve. "I will not let you control my work, my vision. Humanity's future is not for you to decide." The line went silent for a moment, and then the voice returned, colder than before. "We warned you, Marcus. We will be in touch." Before Marcus could respond, the call ended with a sharp click. He stared at the phone in his hand, his pulse racing. Phoenix Group wasn't playing games. They were making their move, and it wouldn't be long before they came after him with everything they had. That night, as he lay in bed, Marcus realized something profound. He had always believed in the potential of humanity, in the idea that people could rise above their limitations. But now, he understood that true greatness wasn't just about potential. It was about taking a stand, about being willing to fight for the future, no matter the cost. The next morning, Marcus made his decision. He would not cower in the shadows. He would not let Phoenix Group control the narrative. He would fight. But to do that, he needed to understand everything, every aspect of the secret his grandfather had passed down to him. It was time to confront the forces that sought to suppress humanity's destiny. Elijah had been right. It wasn't just his art that was at stake. The future of humanity, the truth about who they were and what they could become, hung in the balance. And Marcus would be the one to tip the scales. He packed his bags and left his studio behind, heading for the last place he could trust, his grandfather's hidden sanctuary. There, he would find the answers he needed to stop Phoenix Group. But he knew one thing for certain: the path ahead would not be easy. The fight for humanity's future was just beginning. The road to Elijah's sanctuary was longer than Marcus had anticipated. It took him through winding roads, far from the comforts of the city, and deeper into the isolation that had once seemed like safety. But now, with every mile that passed, the isolation felt more like a fortress, keeping the rest of the world out, just as it had kept the truth hidden for so many years. When he arrived, the familiar sight of the small cabin nestled in the forest brought a momentary sense of peace. The door creaked open as Elijah, still looking every bit the mysterious figure he had always been, motioned Marcus inside. "You've come at the right time," Elijah said, his voice low and urgent. He closed the door behind Marcus with a decisive click, ensuring that no one could overhear their conversation. Marcus was exhausted, both mentally and physically, but the weight of the situation forced him to focus. "You were right," he said. "Phoenix Group is coming for me. They want to control my art. They want to control the future. But I don't know how to stop them. Elijah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to an old wooden desk cluttered with ancient books, files, and a half-empty cup of coffee. He pulled a thick folder from the top of the pile and handed it to Marcus. "You've been living in the world they've created," Elijah said, his voice colder now. "A world that believes humanity is just another species in the vast expanse of the universe. But that's not the truth. The truth is, humans are the key to something much greater. And Phoenix Group knows it." Marcus opened the folder, flipping through pages filled with documents, photographs, and sketches. There were old maps of space, some of them from long before humanity had ever reached the stars. There were blueprints for technology that looked far beyond what was available to the public, and notes written in a cryptic language that Marcus couldn't fully understand. But there were a few words that kept repeating: legendary, ascension, and the awakening. "The truth," Elijah continued, his voice growing more intense, "is that humans are not just any species. We've been here for far longer than anyone realizes. And we're not just meant to inhabit this planet, we're meant to guide the universe to its next stage. Humanity's potential is unparalleled. But for that to happen, we need to unlock the truth of our origins." Marcus stared at the papers in disbelief. "What are you talking about? How does this relate to my art?" Elijah placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, his eyes now full of both sorrow and determination. "Your art isn't just a reflection of your imagination, Marcus. It's a message, a key. Your work is one of the few things that can bring humanity closer to understanding what we've forgotten. But Phoenix Group knows that, too. They don't want you to awaken humanity's true potential.